tell you what.
Nathan,
What's up, Lucas?
you're not coming to NARBC, man.
No, I'm not.
Are you going to try to come to Carpet Fest,
October, right?
please?
It's gonna be tough.
Okay. Well,
I can't promise it. It's not looking likely. But
if you can't, can we try to go to the can we try to go to
what about Super Show in January?
Yep, that's exactly what I was going to say. Can we try to go to the
So,
Super Show?
I'm gonna reach out
We
to
could
my aunt that was just here. We're working on the family house, just doing some major renovations there, but it's like 30-45 minutes out from Pomona. So we would have a beach house in January potentially to say it.
Okay. Well, that's fair enough. And then maybe we can do a live episode at the show and maybe find someone with a booth that'd be willing to like be a sponsor and have their banner in the background, whatever.
Yeah. Super show and a super live from the Retic Lounge.
Right. But also it's going to be my first Super Show ever. And to be honest, I wouldn't mind not recording. But anyways, let's jump into episode 109. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Retic Lounge. As we mentioned, Nathan and myself, Lucas, your co-host. Man, we've been doing this over 2 years now, and I'm every episode I'm excited to talk to people that we have on. We're going to be having Glen on. For those of you that obviously saw the thumbnail, we have Glen McClellan on, and we're not doing a history of reticulated pythons, but we want to talk about the complete reticulated python that he just wrote. Well, I don't want to say he just wrote, but was just published and released, and I see everyone and their mom getting it, which is a good thing. But we need more people to get it. So we have Glen on, and really what today is going to be about is the making of this book. We've talked about it in previous episodes when we I think 3 or 4 episodes back when I talked to Glen, he said it was okay when it was looking to be released sometime around Daytona, NARBE, I believe, and or BCE or whatever that, I don't know. Sorry for butchering that, but he put years of work into this book, and I want to give him credit where credit's due and allow him to talk about all that it took. Because to me, Nathan, I think that there's one very, very inspiring thing about this entire thing. Every single
quote on chapter or on page 325. Okay.
Size matters. But for those of you that have the book, go to page 325, look at the top and the quote, and you'll get a kick out of it. But what I think the important message here that I want to talk about a bit in this episode is the fact that this entire book was done by just networking and doing heavy amount of research, and was things that he learned and gathered from other data, other people talking. And I can't express the importance of just people who want to get into keeping and breeding retics, that you guys are capable of getting this information as well. Now, fortunately for you, Glen has put this all into a book, but the Retic Nation, people in Europe, people in this country, it's all a wealth of information that if they're willing to give it to you is free. And to me, that's inspiring. This book was written on research and research and research, and none of us are incapable of just reaching out to the people that we need to find important information. This goes across any species that you want to get into. So, Nate, anything else that you want to talk to before we shout out our new sponsor and talk about kind of a series that we're going to be doing?
I say we just talk a little bit about the series that we're going to be doing before we jump into that new sponsor, because we've talked about that a little bit. But With the release of this book, we want to start a new series, a little book club where we sit down once a month and we dive deep into a chapter by chapter kind of breakdown of the
Maybe
book.
even more than once a month, maybe like every 3 weeks.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
I want to, like, if we're a Retic podcast, I feel like even doing it every few episodes is worthwhile. And I'm excited for a book club. I
Well,
don't know.
I think it's kind of fun too because a lot of people that are really excited about the book, like you mentioned before, have already purchased and have
They're
had their
diving in.
copies arrive. Yeah, so it could be fun to kind of go through the book as kind of a book club with the whole Retic community.
This is a God thing. I opened up the book and Dwigged was right there. My email,
Right next to the
RIP.
cow. Yeah, I already
Yeah,
saw that
man,
picture. That's great.
freaking Dwigged. One of my favorite snakes I've ever owned. Only Retic I've ever had die on me. Asshole. Anyways, so with that being said, a book club. For those of you that aren't aware what a book club looks like, we're going to be breaking apart chapter by chapter. We're going to go in, we're going to read parts of the chapter, we're going to dissect the chapter. We are going to have our typical episode lengths. These are going to be chapters being reviewed in about an hour and 15 to an hour and 30 minutes, really diving deep, not just into the content of the chapter, but our thoughts. We're going to dissect the words that are in here. We're going to provide any additional again, non-expertise in more anecdotal information when it's relevant. I'm just really stoked for it. I've been reading a little bit more of other books, and at my job we do a book club every quarter, and I've really enjoyed those. So I'm excited to be able to do this for and with the Retic community. So we hope that you guys will join along with us, read the chapter that we're going to be doing, and every couple weeks or few weeks we're gonna really just
grab
dive
a
in.
copy because you have time to start along with us.
Exactly. Before we go any further and we bring Glen in, I'm gonna post this up. Thank you so much to our newest sponsor, Cold-Blooded Cafe. We officially have a little banner here before we have the full ad that we're going to be promoting here soon, but Reptile Lounge 20 for 20% off. This is a sponsor that they were generous enough to provide for the entire network. So every other new podcast that comes out, or not every other, but every new podcast that we decide to come out with is going to have this as well. So you guys are going to gain access to this. So yeah, please use our code. We're going to start promoting this more now that we have this here. And yeah, Nate, have you made your first order with them since the sponsorship? I think I got my first one coming up.
I have my first one coming in. Well, not coming in, but I'm placing it soon.
Yeah.
First one since we've connected, but I've made plenty of orders through Cold-Blooded over the years. They've been my main source of like quantity feeders being sent in.
Yeah, they do have great rodents, and on top of that, I get chicks from them now. They also
chicks are great.
They also sell pigs when they have them. They can
pigs,
even
rabbits,
quail eggs.
Yeah, all sorts of stuff.
They're branching out. They're doing a great job. But why don't we go ahead and bring Glen on if you're ready? Whether you've poured your heart and soul into your reptile business or you've just begun your business journey, AE Foundry has you covered with next level expertise in graphic design, motion graphics, videography, photography, and so much more. If you've been dying for a new logo for your reptile business, motion graphics for your current logo, a new website, or need assistance making your video podcast come to life, then listen carefully. AE Foundry's mission places storytelling at its core. AE Foundry believes that a distinctive story and background are the driving forces that set your brand apart. In today's market, consumers seek more than just products. They crave a connection built on trust with the brands they cherish. AE Foundry is committed to empowering small businesses and fostering authenticity that resonates with their consumers. Reach out to them and let them help you craft a visual narrative that helps establish a genuine and lasting connection with your audience. To contact AE Foundry, email them at aromero@aefoundry.com or on Instagram @AEFoundry. When it comes to housing your retics, trust me, you're going to want an enclosure that will be just as strong and durable as your reticulated python. The Heartland Reptile Enclosure is next level tough and will outlive you and your retic by several generations. Heartland Reptile Enclosures are designed and manufactured out of powder-coated aluminum to provide the highest quality and longevity available in the reptile enclosure. What makes them even better is they are lighter than your PVC and plastic enclosures out there and are extremely tough. Stop playing around with plastic enclosures for your large constrictors and step up your enclosure game with the Heartland Reptile Enclosure. To inquire about one of these enclosures, speak to Jordan himself at Heartland Reptiles on Instagram, Facebook, and on TikTok. Here on TRL, we preach about the importance of using hooks, feeding tongs, and other tools with your reticulated python all the time. Animal Equipment by Stoney not only has all the tools you need for any snake you keep, but they have the absolute best hooks on the market. What sets Animal Equipment by Stoney's hooks apart from the other guys is their polycarbonate hook ends that provide a warm feel that won't disturb or bother your retic, ensuring a positive interaction from the get-go. Since 2008, AE Stoney has been supplying zoos, herpetologists, and other animal professionals with their tools. It's time for you to step your hook game up and buy an AE Stoney hook. To learn more and purchase one of their amazing products, visit aestoney.com. Glenn, what's going on, man?
Nothing much. Thanks for having me back, guys.
Absolutely, dude. This is what, your
Fourth appearance.
fourth appearance. Fourth appearance. Glad to have you back on.
The previous three?
No, dude, we still to this day get messages about how great of a series that is.
Delete
you gave a great presentation.
I feel like I could do it better now. Now that I have,
now that you have a book written, is that what you were going to say?
I think I could have conveyed it in a more compelling manner. I think I've learned how to do that far more while keeping it educational.
I don't know. You're still a UF vet student. I'm not sure that compelling is the right word to describe that, but
Thank you.
I'm kidding. Sorry. Anyways, guys, I'm happy to have you on first off, and let me just start by saying I have a question for you. Has the weight been lifted off your shoulders now that the book is out?
Yeah. So in some ways it has. It's nice to finally be done, not have to worry about, oh gosh, what is the newest development that I need to add? Oh great, someone found a new morph that I need to add. And then the other issue is that every time I look at the book now, there's a mistake that I see or a little imperfection that I hadn't picked up on in the past. So now that it's published, I'm sure no one else is going to see that. But because I've looked at this so closely for so long, I can see every little thing I would change. But now that it's published, I can't. That is very much me being psychotic about this. And I'm still incredibly pleased with how it turned out. But that portion of me that always wants to be right can't be satisfied. But that's freeing in some ways.
Right. No, I can totally imagine the relief, but now your word is out there. The book is out there. There's opportunity for critique and then also it just, what I'm hearing is that you kind of have a drive for this like perfectionism of wanting it to be like just, the perfect word that gets out there on the animals. And obviously we know that that's not possible or realistic. There's always going to be something that you have to go back and fiddle with.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, any detrimental misspellings or anything like that, or is it all stuff that really should fly over everyone's head?
The most egregious thing I've found so far is that there's one image and on the caption it says photo image courtesy of blank, and it should read image courtesy of blank. That's the most egregious thing, but you have to be looking at it at a pretty fine-tooth comb for that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was going to say most people looking at the images are looking at the images.
Yeah, some people only read it for the images, much like myself.
Right. I had a light go out, which kind of sucks, but oh well.
Yeah, once
I
I
tried
saw
turning
the
it back on.
pictures, I was like, "Oh, this is my style of book."
Yeah.
Right. No,
Thank
so
you,
I do want to give you kudos. The hundreds of images that you have in there are meant for people like me. I'm not the best reader. I never have been, ADHD through the roof, my retention on things. But when I see images that grasp me and give context to what I'm reading, and it ties in with each page, the reading is just much easier to get into, because you're able to have an illustration that symbolizes the message that's being sent. So first and foremost, and I know that we said this, but thank you, like truly thank you. And now I'll say this for the entire Retic community. Thank you for diving into this. I want to jump right into what the hell inspired you to like want to be this ridiculous and come out with a, what is it,
446 pages.
46 pages
Yeah.
of the most I don't know. I don't even know how to describe retics. What are they the most of? You know, obviously the longest species, but they're I think the most, if there's any python species in the world that I think catches people in awe, it's the reticulated python.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's looking back and trying to think of how I would answer this question. It's frustrating because there's not a straightforward answer, because I'm not the straightforward person to do this. I took far more of a approach that you would see with like an investigative reporter. And so looking back and thinking that I actually had the idea that I could, number one, do this, and then number two, get it published, is just very weird. However, if I'm being a little bit more serious with myself and my trajectory, it does make a little bit more sense, because I opened the book with a story about how I watched Austin Stevens look for a man-eater in, I believe, Borneo, and he found this beautiful, beautiful reticulated python, and it tried to bite his face off. And I think I write, and if there is a more indicative experience of working with a reticulated python, I'd love to hear it.
Right.
So that was a very fundamental toddler memory for me. And then growing up, I was fortunate enough to go down to Fountain Valley to Jay's place several times, and for all of his flaws, and those are numerable, I do have to say that Jay always opened his doors with open arms and gave me the time of day and treated me with absolute respect. So I have him to thank quite a bit for the exposure to the herpetoculture side of keeping reticulated pythons. And then growing older and realizing that, oh, I could actually own these animals that I grew up seeing, but I saw the 20-foot versions, and all of a sudden there's 8-foot versions that I could actually keep. It really inspired me again, because it followed that same trajectory of this common piece that kept showing up. And as part of that, I wanted to do as much research as I could, because it's still an 8-foot animal and still potentially dangerous, unfortunately. And one of the things you'll find very early on when you're researching these animals is the amount of misinformation, falsehoods, and just perhaps misleading, intentionally or unintentionally. So I think one of the most egregious examples, especially for the dwarfs and super dwarfs, is someone like Samson saying that a 25% super dwarf could stay as small as a mainland. And people...
What? That's not true. Sorry.
If you starve it, yes, you'll either end up with a dead animal, a small malnourished animal, or a mainland-sized animal if you feed it properly.
Right.
However, people believed him. The animals suffered as a result. I'm imagining their relationships with those animals suffered as a result. And that is some information that people took as valid, unfortunately. And I know, Lucas, you've talked about this in the past, but on the, I believe it's the Reptile Forums UK, there's that pretty long article about the guy who was talking about the different dwarf and super dwarf populations, and he segregates Madu and Honey Island. And
Right.
that's still a very common source. And there's good information in that, but it's outdated now.
Right.
So there's good information, but to find it in a singular source that doesn't have ulterior motives or something to sell you or a particular belief system behind it, I think is hopefully a welcome addition to the reticulated Python subset of herpetoculture.
I want to say this, and I'll just go through, because you talk about having a singular source with as much information as possible, and I want to go through the table of contents while I have you on here. It going to be quick, but guys, there's nine.
The table of contents. I thought you were going to say the acknowledgments. I was like, if you're talking about the sources of information.
No, I don't want to do that because then I would come off as egotistical because I think my name's in there.
Yes, it is. We'll get to the acknowledgments at the end because I do want to thank everyone who helped, because that's no man's an island.
Yeah,
that's at the end.
And one thing is reading those acknowledgments, and I'll just say this right now, is the amount of people that provided support in this was there's a lot that I have to say about the shittiness of the retic community. But I think this book right here is an example of how people can get together to create something that does these animals a service when it's needed. So I'm excited for you to talk about that a little bit at the end, but real quick, table of contents, because I think it's valuable to go through the table of contents for you guys to actually hear everything that is involved in this book. And Glenn, I hope it's okay if I share this, or maybe I'm wrong.
You are.
But when we first started talking a long time ago, probably close to 2.5 years ago, you originally were going to write a book about dwarf and super dwarf reticulated pythons.
Absolutely. Yes.
And it seems like you just got bombarded with so much more information that you're like, why stop at that?
It would be insincere to limit myself and limit this information that was shared with me to only the dwarf and super dwarf populations, because there is so much overlap, obviously, and there are so many improvements that can be made on both sides if you want. My interests lie with the dwarfs and super dwarfs. However, taking a larger, more holistic approach, I think it's just better for the species as a whole in herpetoculture.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Okay, so Chapter 1 is on taxonomy, phylogeny, and the species range, and it also has a locality.
Over toponymy.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Just because I was like, I didn't want to butcher that. But yeah, taxonomy, toponymy, and phylogeny, and the species range, and it also has a locality archives in there, from west to east. And so that, I'm assuming that's all the way from Jampianus going over to the Maluku region.
Yeah, have you looked at it?
It's a lot.
Okay.
I'm
second. That's why I asked.
Second chapter, the Solaire Islands, their people, their climate, and their snakes. Chapter 3, origins of MR Jampianus and insular MR Saputra. If you don't know what MR is, that stands for Python reticulatus. 4, insular dwarfism. 5, morphology. 6, captive history and captive history timeline. 7, importation process. Chapter 8, captive husbandry with husbandry equipment and their respective recommendations. 9, heating and lighting. 10, nutrition. 11, morphs and reticulated pythons. 12, what is a dwarf and super dwarf reticulated python. 13, what is a pure locality reticulated python. 14, size potential and associated dangers. 15, purchasing guide for a reticulated python. 16, health concerns. 17, captive propagations. 18, conservation, the skin trade and its sustainability. And 19, invasive large constrictors, which is a great chapter. I skipped directly to that when I got the book. Mm-hmm. It's amazing.
That was the last minute. I wrote that in, I think, March of this year, and we sent this to the printer in April. So that was nuts. Basically, I talked to someone and they completely changed my view. So I had to write that chapter.
Right. So
thank you, Dr.
Again,
Timothy Colston.
If any of you guys can think of any other area of reticulated python that needs to be written on, please drop it in the comments, because it is by far the most expansive and expansive is a word, but it's also condensed into readable material. But it's the most information you're going to find on the reticulated pythons. And I don't mean that to take anything away from what Sid James did with the reticulated python book that he wrote.
No, but it's very brief. I mean, we're talking
right.
not even a quarter of this book, I believe.
Yeah.
No.
And I've talked to Sid about this. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
I think the books are very good foils to each other, to where if you bought your first reticulated python at a show and you don't know what you're doing, go to Sid's book. I go there, please, because this is a lot of information. Or if you're just vaguely interested in the species and want a kind of broad overview, go to Sid's book. If you want the comprehensive, oh my gosh, this is a lot of information, I think my book's a little bit better suited for that.
Yeah, I think the only other book that I have that kind of covers them even briefly to the degree that you went to in this book was Bob and Tracy Barker's
Dave
Pythons of the Southeast.
Dave and Tracy Barker,
yeah, sorry.
Pythons of the World, Volume 3, The Malay Archipelago.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Don't worry, I've only read that like a million times. That's why I know the title verbatim. It's such a good book.
Yeah, that's the only book that dedicated like a good chapter to it had 2 chapters because it covered. Did it have 3?
Because it was Saputria reticulatus and then
you were right.
Yeah.
You're right.
And it's that book that really laid forth the current taxonomy, because they actually included Kayawati, Kalau, Bonarate as Championus.
Right.
Whereas,
Dude.
Sorry. What?
No, I'm sorry. I opened up the book, and every time I open up the book, I see a new picture. I'm seeing this white. I'm seeing this white phase albino that was collected in the Philippines. And,
I think that's from Adrian Lim.
And dude, that is nuts.
That was found under, I think, roof tin or something.
Not to take away from what Nathan was saying.
I know why Bob Barker popped in my head now. It was because of the
Clark.
It was the Happy Gilmore thing earlier.
Oh, that we were talking about backstage
before we started recording.
Yeah. Glenn, if it's okay with you, let's talk. So we talked about the inspiration for the book. Genuinely, when did this journey begin?
Yeah, that's another good question. So it began in earnest about August, September of 2022. I think it was around the time your guys' podcast came out, I think. And you have to keep in mind that this is the height of the dwarf and super dwarf, kind of the current era, flying off the shelf, stuff like that. And
you were excited, man. We were talking about genetic stripe stuff. Like, and this is before, we talked about genetic stripe projects. I remember I was cleaning shit in the garage and we were talking about you weren't committed to going to UF, and so we were talking about like the animals that you were interested in.
Oh yeah. I really regret not being able to bring the wild caught Kalatoa and then the Kayawati.
You're doing a better thing.
Yeah, and I'm not stupid enough to bring a retic to Florida. People ask me that, like, "Oh, why don't you have them?" Yeah,
I mean, I just did before we started recording, so
I know, but like, yes, I want nothing more than to have retics here because I could keep them outside. You know how cool that would be,
dude. Don't even get me started.
Okay, off topic. I was thinking about getting a pair of like Beox and keeping them outside.
Dude, you can literally get a pair of whatever you want.
Yeah.
And you can any tropical species and you're set.
Yeah. But okay, regardless, it began in earnest about August and September of 2022. And I briefly shared some of the details on one of the previous podcasts, but
we also want to thank VivTech Products for being an affiliate sponsor of the Retic Lounge. Stop by VivTech Products for the best UV spectrum lighting on the market that will enhance and improve your snake's overall well-being and health. Visit vivtechproducts.com and use the code ReticLounge23 today for 15% off. Again, visit vivtechproducts.com and use our affiliate code ReticLounge23 today for 15% off.
Looking for the perfect accessories for your hatchlings or juvenile retics? Look no further than Heli Guy Serpents. Our sponsor, Chris Sexton, is coming in hot with an amazing 3D printer, creating top-notch perches and other caging accessories for your beloved pets. Enrich your Retic's environment with their high-quality products. Use our promo code TRL10 for a 10% discount on your purchase. Visit them today at heliguyserpents.com and start giving your pets the best. Heli Guy Serpents, the premier source for 3D printed caging accessories. Again, that's www.heliguyserpents.com and use our promo code TRL10 for 10% off all of your 3D printed accessories today.
I was doing research with fruit flies. So Drosophila melanogaster is one of the prime research species for genetics work. It's been so long. I think it was investigating novel transgenes in Drosophila melanogaster's eye. I don't remember. It's been a really long time. My part of that project was finishing up, so I would have to move on to something else, and that something else was failing miserably. So I wasn't too interested in trying to work with PCR gels that weren't producing quality results. I could try to do something else with that lab. It wasn't going to go in a fruitful manner. Double entendre there. So I was talking with my research advisor, and I said, I've been toying around with this idea of writing about these insular populations of reticulated pythons. I would be able to really combine more of the herpetology side of things, and could I submit that portion of a potential book to you? And for some reason he agreed, and that really set me off, and it gave me the time, it gave me the freedom really to pursue something that I wouldn't have done otherwise. So thank you, Dr. Marcy.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you have another senior thesis in mind before the book was submitted?
Yeah, that was the fruit fly research.
Okay, yeah. Okay. I thought there was something else on top of the fruit fly.
Actually,
it was
it's not boring.
I thought there was
it's
something
actually
else reptile related, so that's my misunderstanding.
Maybe. I don't know.
No,
Maybe
but
not.
and I don't want to say boring as a jab, but in the retic versus fruit flies, I just want to, my bias is definitely showing here.
Was it squirrel monkeys, maybe, Nathan? Because I almost went to Brazil to do a squirrel monkey project, and I didn't pan out.
That's not ringing a bell either, but now I want to hear. But that's totally.
I almost did do it. And then I should say that research with the fruit flies hasn't been published, so don't go out looking for it because you're not going to find it. I don't know if it'll ever be published. I did my part. That's all that matters.
Like Lucas said, I think I'm more interested in the work with reticulated pythons here.
Me too. Yeah.
Although I do want to Google what a fruit monkey or a squirrel monkey is and bring it up on the page. A fruit monkey.
They're native to Brazil.
So you this started around 2022. You started doing some research. Take us through that process early on. Like where did you begin? You obviously saw the gaps, right? And we talked about that. There was a gap of information about these animals, and you couldn't find good information in a singular source. And if you go online and you search the old forums, or you were a part of them, like I was towards the end of them, good information, outdated information. And then basically anytime that you wanted to find more information, you had to talk to new breeders, or breeders now to get the information. But even if you were talking to myself, there's always going to be some form of bias and some form of information that's not necessarily the most accurate. And that's why Nathan and I, frequently say we're not experts in what we're putting out there, right? But where did you start? I'm just curious how it unfolded into what did I say? 19 chapters?
Oh, I don't know, something ridiculous. So I
19.
approached it probably the worst way you could. And that was with no plan. It was
Sounds a lot like our podcast, Lucas.
Dude, every week.
This guy or this guy.
That guy. Oh, that guy. There. No, so I just probably reaching out to the wrong people at the wrong times, not being critical enough with who I was talking to, or taking too many people at face value, which is very saddening in hindsight. However, that's the reality. So it was just kind of a see who would bite. And then one of the things and one of the mistakes I would make is I would ask everyone, who should I talk to next? And the reason why that is bad, and I realize that now, is that it would be insulting to people's ego, because it would be implying that there is more better information out there that someone else could provide. I didn't see it that way. I saw it in being the selfish way of, I want to talk to everyone with good information. However, that wasn't always perceived in that manner. So I learned to have a little bit more tact as I went along. And sometimes that question did reveal extremely fruitful answers. People like Dr. John Edwards, who was the first to breed Karupa locality types in the UK. I would have never found him had Luke told me about him. Same with John Griffin and many other people like that. Adam Waz told me about Kevin Ivancic, who's a French keeper and breeder who tried to write a book about these guys at one point too, and he was another very interesting person to talk to. So it was talk to as many people as I can. And going back to that investigative reporter metaphor, is that there is an objective truth that can be found. And if I talk to enough people, and if I create this amalgamation of what they have to say, I can get at least closer to that objective truth. And that's what I tried to accomplish with the book.
Yeah. And man, I mean, you're mentioning names that I don't know. And so
that's for a reason, because they don't want to be in the spotlight. They don't seek it out. They don't seek notoriety. However, they have great information, and that's something I understood, or I came to understand quite a few times over, is that simply because someone doesn't put themselves out there doesn't mean that they don't have great information and have something worthwhile to offer.
And you know, I'm not going to mention who, but I even know that there is someone overseas that is a massive name in the reptile industry that just didn't want their name.
There's a lot of people like that.
It's insane. And not that I don't want to say it's insane, but like, it's a very humble approach, especially with some of these people that I'm thinking of in my mind that you got information from that are literally world leaders in the captive propagation of reticulated pythons. So it's an awesome experience, I'm assuming, for you to you. I mean, I can imagine you talked to probably 200 plus people.
That might be a little bit of a stretch.
Is it? Is it?
There are people who did help who aren't named because they didn't want to be named, or just at other circumstances.
So I'm curious when it comes to the idea of like you gathering the information and you went at it, like you said, completely with no plan. When did that plan start to fall into place, and when did you start to organize this information into sections? And I'm curious how you came up with these different chapters, because you've managed to cover almost all of it, if not the gist of what people need. Where did that start to fall along the lines of organizing it all?
Yeah, I don't know if I've said this so far, but one of the approaches I took was trying to find an answer to every single question I have. And I never grew out of that 2-year-old mentality of asking why. So this
dude, my daughter does that every freaking day, dude.
So never outgrew that. And that's the approach I took.
Okay.
Just, I'll learn something, and okay, why does that happen? And then why does that happen because of that? And so on and so forth. it would have been really smart for me to pick up the other complete series books so I could have seen their table of contents before writing this. And I hate to admit this, but I didn't own a single one before reading or before writing and
That's
finishing this
wild.
book. Yeah, I own them now.
That's wild.
But that
How many are in the? Do you know how many are in the total collection?
So complete carpet, complete chondro, complete boa, complete subox, complete children's. I don't know all of the turtle books, but we'll get to the turtle book at the end.
There's the more complete some of those, right?
Yeah, more complete chondro, more complete carpet, more complete boa. There's other books that are in spirit, like Warren Treacher's Sand Boa book. It's very much in that same vein, but it's not published by Eco or Living Art. So,
you know, I'm opening up the chapters. I'm going through some of them right now, and I'm as we do this book club episodes. There's, if you're okay with it, there's gonna need to be some chapters that we bring you along. Like I'm looking at the UV spectrum and the glow light bulbs and
that was
and all those diagrams and all that stuff. And I'm probably going to let you lead that episode. Okay.
Yeah. If we talk about that in
Nathan,
any detail, I need to read the again because I can't speak about it specifically.
Nathan, go to page 184.
Okay, I'm almost there.
Yeah, that chapter I know is going to get a lot of criticism, but at the end of it,
that's because if you go to any lighting Facebook group, there's constant criticism in what's available out there. So it is what it is. You can't provide more than what's available.
Yeah, and it's.
I think I can break this down.
Oh yeah, I believe you, Nathan. Oh, I'll quote Ron St. Pierre on this. He was on, I think it was The Expert in the Idiot.
Dude,
and
I first of all, shout out to Adam, Patreon member that is doing a phenomenal job with his new podcast, The Expert in the Idiot.
Yeah.
And shout out for getting someone like Ron St. Pierre that a lot of the industry has controversial opinions on him. I freaking love the dude.
Oh, I didn't know he was controversial, but it was a very interesting listen.
His research and his anecdotal information on Amazon tree boas and the different conclusions he's come to, and his methods and practices are very in the boa community very hated.
I will say though, talk to a veterinarian, and I'll keep it
Yeah,
at
of course.
that. But
Yeah,
husbandry wise, oh my gosh, I was taking notes. No, please don't talk to me. Please do not talk to me. I am not. No, give me like 2 more years and then you can talk to me. But no, not right now. I cannot emphasize that enough. I know nothing.
I know nothing. I feel like even when you graduate, you're still going to be like,
yeah.
I don't know.
No, I cannot give you any medical advice. No.
But yeah, I wanted to give a short plug and shout out.
Yeah.
Adam's doing a great job.
Yeah. So back to, now I remember my original point. Ron St. Pierre was asked about providing supplemental UV radiation. And he said that there is enough evidence on both sides to be right. And I thought that was a perfect way to sum it up, because if you approach it as you need to do X or you need to do Y, you will always, number one, be met with the same talking points, but then number two, be convincing people of something they probably won't be convinced of. So it is very obvious that the lighting and heating regimen that I laid out here is insane. But I'm trying to write a book that will still be relevant in 20 years. Because Lucas, what is the first thing that people talk about when they bring up the more complete chondro nowadays?
That it's outdated.
Yeah, like the husbandry is outdated.
Right,
And
exactly.
that there's a lot of great information in that book, but whenever people talk about it, there's always that asterisk behind it. And I did everything in my effort to have this be the most current husbandry recommendations. And I know it's pretty far out there, but in 20 years, it won't be.
Right, exactly. In 20 years, hopefully we have more people that are keeping to the standards that you put forth.
Yeah.
In the book, which is good, because we see a big push in the husbandry, and I think, don't quote me on this, but I'm hopeful that I'll get to talk to Greg Maxwell at Bill's on Friday, and we're recording now on a Monday, and I am going to pick its brain if there's any information about an updated chondro book.
He said something about that on one of the interviews he did, that I think Bob approached him about doing another one, but he wasn't sure about it.
He's back. He's keeping again.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it goes.
It would need to be a book that's co-authored. But I think that name carries so much weight.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. And then, I mean, who else has all of those photos and the stories about those original bloodlines? But here nor
Right.
So, Glenn, you're hoping for at least a 20-year break before the more complete reticulated python.
You know,
I want to graduate vet school.
Dude, I asked Glenn about the more complete reticulated python book, and he messaged me back with "F you," and then that was the end of our conversation for the night.
See, I got this book in the mail, and that was my first impulse. I know I haven't been through it yet, but I'm ready for the more complete reticulated python.
Oh man, we haven't even broken chapter by chapter, man.
That wasn't even like a joke. That was how I legitimately felt at that moment.
Dude, I can imagine. You just put friggin' 2.5 years into this book, and I talk about the more complete reticulated python.
And I knew what you were trying to do too.
Yeah, and you said F you, and I just left it at that. I was like, fair.
That was private conversation, I should say.
Oh man. But what I will say is that I think that's actually really thoughtful of you to kind of put forth the effort into putting out a book that represents what we're looking at husbandry and captivity wise for these animals in 20 years, because what we've talked about a lot on this podcast is the very, very, very slow growth of reticulated python husbandry and captivity. Very slow. You look at the dart frog, you look at geckos, you look at so many other species, and things have just exploded in a short period of time with how to keep these animals, even the leopard gecko community. But yeah, with retics, it's just been stagnant for a long time. And we are fortunate that we're fortunate and cursed in the sense that we have a new era of keepers that are pushing the limits. In I will say an obnoxious way for some and for many, but nonetheless, I think it all goes back to the well-being of these animals. So, Glenn, do you have from all the information that you gathered and everything and that you put forth? I'm curious. Do you mind shedding light into a little bit about what's in the book as far as captive husbandry and your thoughts on captive husbandry in general and where we should be?
Yeah, so that's what I was looking down for. I wanted to read the opening paragraph to that chapter, just to preface everything. But it goes, reticulated pythons in captivity can live in a wide array of settings, ranging from optimal to optimized neglect. This chapter will examine what are currently deemed best husbandry practices. Reticulated pythons will survive, eat in breeding conditions far poorer than the ones that will be described. It is a well-documented...
Shout out Samson.
That was implied. It is a well-documented and indisputable fact. However, for those that are willing for those willing to take up the challenge of keeping these snakes the way they deserve to be kept, this chapter will offer a guide on how to do so. So, I want to fully acknowledge where we are in herpetoculture and where we're coming from, because even I would say 5 years ago, the things that I talk about in the book wouldn't have not been possible with the current climate. So
even 2 years ago, when Lucas and I started this podcast and started talking about some of these subjects, I think this book is going to be able to add so much more depth to some of those subjects.
Yeah. Oh, I'll throw Lucas under the...
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I'll throw Lucas under the bus here. You and I were talking about enrichment, and I said, even the substrate plays a role in enrichment, and then you were dumbfounded.
Yeah, no, and then we did the episode probably 2 weeks after, and we talked about substrate of being as a form of enrichment, and even if you keep on like a cocoa bedding, and then 2 weeks later you do a change and you put it on paper, that snake is stimulated.
Yes, increasing its neuroplasticity.
Exactly. But yeah, Nathan, actually, as I was reading the chapter by chapter in my head, I was like, dude, when we do this book club, we're revamping so
Refreshing,
much of
yeah.
the husbandry stuff. Which I'm excited for. You know, and it again goes to show the value of the piece of literature that you put out there. But
Yeah, you're helping this podcast survive just a little bit longer.
right, thank you
One
so
week at a
much.
time.
You know, but I'm curious, Glenn, if you can set the book down.
No, I can't.
If you can
It's
set
like glued to my hand now.
I bet. But if you can metaphorically set the book down, where do you think we should be in a form of captive husbandry for these animals?
Yeah. So
This is opinion based right now.
Yeah.
So
Okay. I was thinking about this the other day, and I was thinking to my poor ball python. So I have had this thing for 10 years. I got it from Barcheck at the
Awesome.
Super Show, actually. And this poor animal suffered through every mistake that you can make. However, every mistake I've learned something from. And then with each mistake, I was able to find a way to grow and improve his husbandry, my knowledge of them, et cetera, et cetera. And every step in that process, he rewarded me by showing new natural behaviors and challenging me to improve his husbandry. So that's where I come from, of making mistakes and then seeing the benefit of when you improve upon them. And from my perspective, with a little bit of herpetology, biology basis, once again, a little bit, only have a BS in this. I am not a master. I don't have my master's degree, working towards my doctoral in a semi different subject. But with that little bit of a science background, and then just seeing herpeticulture, a evidence-based approach to husbandry, something that's really championed by people like Dr. Zach Loafman at West Liberty, begins to makes a lot of sense to me, because the way a snake interacts with its environment is a lot different than my 5-month-old kitten that's asleep at my feet. It's, obviously the issue of domestication, and then the issue of cognitive processing, because we generally put animals like cats and dogs at higher levels. So a lot of the common sense notions, I guess, that you think would apply don't. And Lucas, you told me about at Reptlandia that they put an anaconda in a naturalistic enclosure and it got mean. You remember that?
Yep.
That is like that is what I think of as ideal husbandry, as
right.
backwards as that sounds. These snakes
totally true, though.
Are predators. I talk about it, I think, in the breeding section, that a baby snake that bites is a sign of vigor, and you want that animal. So I was talking to someone about this today in my class, about how often I hold my snakes, and I say, I never really do it, but I've worked with them. So if someone comes here and wants to hold them, come hold a green tree python, that's pretty cool. But my enjoyment comes from watching them and watching them interact with a naturalistic environment. So that's what is my basis for the husbandry recommendations.
Yeah, so getting closer to nature as we can. And
then I talk about this, that simply because it's natural doesn't mean it's good. I think that should go without saying, but there's always someone who wants to, be smart and say, oh, you want to give them parasites? No, that is antithetical to the purpose of keeping them in captivity.
Right. Or you have the people that, like, during the whole bio or naturalistic setup that like to say, well, the plants aren't from their native area, and the isopods aren't from their native area, so therefore is it really right? Like, I get what you're saying, and that I think that just adds more argument to the.
I think I wrote, and it's been a while since I looked at that, so that's why I'm not able to repeat it ad nauseum, unfortunately. But I wrote that in captivity, we're balancing the needs of the keeper and the snake. So that's why I would love to have soil from Indonesia. Yeah, I was trying to
Forgot where
think
they're
of,
from.
well, I'm pointing back there because I have the green trees now. I don't have the retics anymore. So trying to think of, I was going to say PNG, but they're not from Well, actually, okay. Fun fact. There is a PNG animal in our animals lineage and in Clover's lineage.
Yeah. Yeah.
But here nor there. It is a wonderful idea that has no basis in reality. And then unfortunately people take it too far, and it's kind of the ethical Olympics. Simply because you have all Arcadia products doesn't mean you're more ethical than the next person.
Right.
So it's very hard to write about this and trying to do it in a relatively open-minded way that acknowledges the decades and decades of failures and successes of the people who came before me. Because you think I'm going to tell someone like Tim O'Reilly how to breed retics? He is the absolute
He's the
master
legend.
of, yeah. And those, very small cages, in my view, he has figured out how to dial them in perfectly. He has a map of the different temperature ranges in each of those cages. It's incredible.
It's funny you mentioned Tim O'Reilly because we talked about it last week, I think, in our last episode.
Megan, yeah, I caught that.
It was 2 weeks ago with Megan. And we talk about just Tim O'Reilly just being, the under the radar goat for retics.
Yeah, you can't talk about captive breeding
without Tim.
Retics without Tim.
Yeah, and
right.
I remember being outside of an Anaheim show and he's just out there smoking a cigarette, and I'm thinking, wow, this guy is the guy, and he's just sitting there. I haven't watched the full Megaconda video, but did you ask her about the snake where are you going snake meme?
The snake where are you going snake meme?
From like 10 years ago. It's her and Twinkie.
We didn't. You want to shed some light on that? Because I'm not even sure.
Oh, that was her with Twinkie at... Do you remember that?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I've seen that.
Yeah, that's her.
I don't think I ever saw that meme, funny enough, but...
Oh.
Man, history runs deep in this community.
Yeah, I mean, her and Jeff were there all the time. I met Jeff there.
So, I want to ask you, we talked about kind of like this idea of nitpicking, of going back and realizing where you could have added some things or could have taken some things out, and kind of that whole perfectionism aspect of putting this book together. Can you give us a little bit of a mental process of what it went through for you to finally say we have a product to release? Was it pressure of time? Was it pressure of time? Was it like, did the hype start and then you felt like you had to put it out? What led to that? Oh, look, Nathan, hey, it's your girl.
Yeah. Oh, you're muted, Nathan.
I know. 1 second, Lucas, put it back up.
He showed a picture of my bioactive rack setup, and it's
the
it's Athena, it's your tiger.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I needed a photo of the poople albino. I don't know why I didn't specifically ask you. That was stupid of me.
Alessa has some great ones too,
I know.
So the more complete reticulated python, we'll add that in. And
she let me use her images. So, but by the time she caught that snake, I was too late to add it. But back to your original question, Lucas.
Were you getting pressure from the publisher at that point?
A little bit, and then pressure from myself. That was such a chaotic period because we thought we could release it at March Tinley, didn't end up working. We thought we could release it at the June Pomona show, that didn't end up working. But back to the original thing, and why I was laughing was I sent the final thing back and I said, I swear to God, I never want to look at this again.
And here we are talking about it.
Yeah. I didn't hear anything for a month after that. So I was like, oh gosh, what happened? But then I got word that it had been sent to the printer, and everything just takes a lot longer than you'd think. So I think it was 6 weeks to print it, and then probably another 6 weeks to actually get here. So I felt that timeline of telling people, I think we can have it at that March Tinley, and then, okay, I was wrong. I think we can have it at that June Super Show, being wrong again. And then technically I did bring it to Pomona and I did sell my personal copy, but it was not actually for sale at Daytona.
Who'd you sell that to? Because I feel like I saw someone post that.
Raul Gonzalez. He is a turtle
there
guy.
We go.
A big part of the
I love Raul.
Turtle and Tortoise Preservation Group.
Yep,
Great
I did see
community.
those stickers that you sent in.
Yeah, great guys over there, doing great work. They're actually, that's another good topic of conversation, that they're doing like legitimate conservation work within herpetoculture, and I'm very jealous of them, because we like to.
You mean me breeding localities is not legit conservation? I'm joking. It's not.
Serious and continued pressures on the wild populations of these certain species as a whole, not just certain locality types. So
Glenn, you could tell me to shut up. It's okay.
No. No. One of the things they do really well is that they trade animals with each other. So you're removing a big portion of the financial aspect. And I think that's very much in line with a true conservation approach.
You know what? I'm not gonna share names, but I was invited into a circle of Morelia carpets with a couple people that I truly respect. That they do exactly that with their locality species, and they've brought me into that, knowing that I'm not breeding carpets anytime soon. But they brought me into that, and this idea of like, I'm going to send you animals and you send me them when you're ready. Or like, if I want to retake locality retake, you send them to me. And it's become one of those things where they've had this going on for a while, where with locality stuff and even the more specific line bred locality stuff, they're sending to each other. No money involved to ensure that they're improving and expanding on bloodlines of these animals and continuing the captive propagation of locality specific carpet pythons. And I thought when that person kind of invited me into that circle, I was like, this is genius. Like I wish that people took more of a mental approach that way of spreading the wealth and working together instead of it being strictly financial.
Absolutely. It's about removing the ego from something like that. That's unfortunately very associated with just kind of the modern herpetoculture. And I want to talk about Morelia here for a second, if I can find it. I have a family tree here from John Irby to showcase why it's so important. There we go. So important to
what page?
Track 356. So if we're talking true conservation, you need to know, or it would be helpful to know information like this, so you know how, what's related, what you can breed, et cetera, et cetera.
You should have mentioned somewhere in the front of the book that you may need a magnifying glass for some of this information.
Dude, I'm trying to edit. I'm trying to change my focal.
Or has my vision really gotten that bad?
No, it's not bad. It's just it's that impressive.
That's the point. It's a full page, and it's to show the scope of what's possible. And I think that can easily be accomplished in reticulated pythons, and I hope it is.
I will say that for a lot of animals already out there, because that's the downfall, I think, of retics, is that no one took the initiative to do this early on. The single downfall, right? There's obviously going to be husbandry and captive, downfalls, but that's with every species to start with, period. But I think that's where the really big downfall comes in the retic industry, is the lack of data keeping and lineage tracking. It's all possible and doable for the most part, right? For the most part.
I'll give credit to Shane. I mean, the 7 generations of selective breeding. I'm sure he can. I know he can trace it. And then Rodney with the Ternate Islands, he knows exactly which animal, what he bred.
Right. Like I have wild caught male 1 to wild top female 4. I have,
Yeah.
right. And it continues along the way. And fortunately for him, he's only 2 generations in.
Yeah. But same with you, Nathan. You know quite a bit of the ancestry on your stuff.
Yeah, that's all thanks in collaboration to, Garrett Hartle and
Richard Bilbo, right?
Richard
And Eric.
Bilbo, Eric Lee as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
They all kind of collaborated it and finding out more about those animals.
So it's doable, right? But there, you are going to run into forks in the road where you just hit a brick wall, but that's okay. You can start at that brick wall and continue moving forward. And as a matter of fact, I'm in the process for all of my locality data stuff of coming up with like the Nick Mutton PowerPoint slide pictures and generations. And I'm going to be, hopefully by the mid of 2025, I'll be able to retrospect and send it to everybody who's bought a locality animal for me, and it'll be available moving forward.
And that's a great goal.
Yeah, and it's a lot of work. But at the end of the day, it's we need to better legitimize retics.
Is
in my
it as
opinion.
much work as creating a 400 and some odd page book about reticulated
Bro,
python?
I could have written that shit with my eyes closed. Okay.
Yeah, you could have. Anyone could have.
So
No
Glenn,
shots.
we've kind of talked about the collaboration efforts, some of the process of the publication. It's
wait.
released now. It's been a week or two. It's gotten into the hands of some people. What's reception been like so far?
Extraordinarily kind and positive, which is very surprising for a reticulated python book. But and anyone who sends me kind messages, I extremely appreciate it.
Any negative feedback? And you don't have to go into detail, but
Nothing meaningful yet.
Fair.
But I take the approach of this book was written under the pretense of improving the general education about the species and then the welfare of the captive population. And if those are things you want to work against, there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can say that'll change that.
right.
Yeah, those are good goals going into it.
No, absolutely. I think that you rock those goals off the bat.
Thank you.
I don't think that anyone in a first publication or even second or third is going to reach perfectionism when it comes to being able to write the perfect book. I mean, like you said, you went through and you're even going through now and wishing that you could be able to change things and edit things. But at the end of the day, the community is better off with this in their hands than they were prior to this being released. So I'm curious. We talked about publication, all that kind of stuff, but I kind of want to dig into more about that. What all goes into finalizing a book? Because I'm sure you had things written and you had you even sent me just some drafts early on. But what's the technical side of things that we're unaware of that are hurdles that I think are appreciated for people that are listening?
Yeah. Okay, this is the nitty gritty. So if it gets boring, stop me because this has been my life for the last 2 years. But
this feeds me. I want to know.
So I will assume August, September 2022 start date for writing. I wrote and researched this in a year. And then it took another year, literally a year to the date, because I submitted the text on August 15th because that was the day my classes started. And then it released on August 15th. So it took a year to lay it out and then get it printed. I thought I was done when I handed in the text, and someone should have hit me over the head with this because I thought that was amongst the most stupidest conceptions I have ever had.
As stupidest? As stupid as the word stupidest. Is that a word?
Yeah.
Keep going.
Stupid, stupider, stupidest.
Yeah, fair. I guess if we're in a Dumb and Dumber
You're
world.
thinking about the word funner, I think.
Oh, probably. Okay, that's fair.
Okay, let's psychoanalyze the man who is prejudicial against the word stupidest.
Stupidest. doesn't sound like a word. I'm gonna look it up.
I have a notes app on my thing of words to know. So every time I see like this big 10-syllable word, I put it in there, how to pronounce it, and then its definition, and then I never use any of them. But it is my proud pseudo-intellectual collection of jargon that I can pull out at a dinner party so people will roll their eyes at me.
So yeah, that would put me to sleep. I'm sorry, Glenn. That's
My
not the kind of
superfluous
party I like to
vernacular
go
is deseratum to my ideal goals.
You just blew my mind right there.
I have never found a correct usage of the word deseratum in a sentence, and I don't think I never will. Or mispronouncing the word nadir. That pisses me off. Once again, putting on the pseudo-intellectual hat that I love.
I kind of
so
feel like we're
deeply,
going into like the line of like demure right now.
that people use inaccurately. Regardless,
So we should
regardless.
so we should have hit you in the head with this because you thought you were done.
I thought I was done. Little did I know. So I wrote about 75% of the book, and then I started to reach out to publishers. So the complete series started with Eco Publishing. So the more complete Chondro, complete Children's Python, complete Boa, and Carpet, were all Eco. And then
Do you mind? I'm sorry. Do you mind going into Eco?
Yeah. So Eco is Eco Publishing is owned by Bob Ashley. He owns the Chiricahua Desert Museum in New Mexico or Arizona. I should know that, but I don't. But they've done that, and in more recent years, he shifted towards more historical. I believe a lot of Native American work, because it's just hard to make money on titles like the Complete Reticulated Python. So I initially approached them, didn't get a response, and so I approached Russ Gurley, who was the editor, and then he laid out those books for Eco. And he agreed to it. And when I approached him, he had just started publishing the False Water Cobra book. It's let's see if I can do the title.
It's
the Natural History and Captive Care, and you can't buy it anymore. The Natural History and Captive Care of False Water Cobras, Barons Racers, and other xenodonts. It's a really long title. Dr. Zach Loafman's book. But that was the first kind of continuation of the complete series outside of Eco. And then Russ has continued that under his own publishing house, Living Art Publishing. So I sent him, what chapter was it? I think it was the importation process chapter that I sent Russ, and talked to Russ on the phone. He said, sure, was very surprised. No one has done it before. I think there was a lot of fear previously in the reptile publishing world about trying to do a retic book for obvious reasons. But as I wrote in the acknowledgments, Russ took a chance on me, and a huge chance. This is the longest first edition of the complete book by the youngest author. And he took a chance on me, much like the ABBA song. So I really have to thank Russ extensively and immensely for agreeing to publish this.
He's been great also with posting on social media and getting the word out there. I've appreciated his role in this entire thing as well.
Yeah, he is very low key, but he is immensely knowledgeable, and his turtle work is bar none. We'll talk about that at the end because I have an announcement. But sent it to him. He said, yep, I'll publish this. So I said, okay, I'll get you the text by August 15th, yada, yada, yada. I was up and pretty late, I think till 11 that night. That was the first night of classes too, so I was already tired and missed out on a social event. But I finished it, so I was very pleased with myself. Sent it to him, thought I was done, ready to start vet school and everything. And then it was okay, send me the photos. Okay. So there's something called Creative Commons, and basically it's a communal source of images, resources that people will share, and you can dictate if people can use them for money or in non-money producing ventures, yada, yada, yada. So some of the images are from there. So a lot of the Slayer Island books are from Fabio Achille, and those were all Creative Commons. And then everything else was me reaching out to people, and I don't know how many names are in that acknowledgments for people who allowed me to use their images. And obviously,
Easy 50, 60.
oh my gosh, way too many.
Way more. It might even surpass that.
Yeah. And that's why I threw out the 200 number. Maybe not people that you directly got information from, but I mean, as far as who has photo credit and people you got information from, it's got to be up there.
Yeah. And then, not everyone's images got used, unfortunately. And, that's just so like, okay, 2 people sent me lineage charts for the green trees, and one was a little bit more detailed and higher resolution. So we went with that one.
Do you mind me asking which one it was that you?
So we used the Bonjo Mercury 2022 clutch from John Irby, but Patrick had sent me a one. It was a Drew pairing. I don't remember, but that was
dated back to like the 80s or 70s.
Yeah, so the initial import for the green trees was 73.
Yeah, that's insane.
But look at what I sent you, Lucas, while I keep talking. So
I did see that.
Yeah, you can trace it back to the initial imports too. But back to the original point of this is that lots of different images from a lot of different people. So it was reaching out, seeing who has good images, and trying to supplement the text as much as possible, because I think it was 160 pages on a Word doc was the text. And, that's a lot. And when you talk about morphs, you really need those images. The morphs chapter ended up being over 100 pages. I had my parents actually read it and proofread it. And once they actually saw it with the photos, it was night and day difference, because they were so lost. They were so bored. But once I actually showed them, oh, hey, this is what this is, and that's what that is, it made all the difference in the world. So it takes a very long time to get credit to use the images, find where they're supposed to go in the text, make sure they're credited to the right person, make sure they're in the right image, they're right and in the right place, that the caption is correct, because that was an issue. And then, 300, 400 times.
This is nuts, by the way, what you sent me of our animals lineage. So, and I think that including images to these chapters is extremely vital. Could you imagine writing a section on morphology and trying to describe what a phantom look like instead of just having a damn picture on there?
That's like trying to describe color to a blind person.
Are you colorblind?
Right.
Well, colorblind, yes, but blind, no.
So it's, going back to the morphs, it's a unique challenge to try to figure out what image to put for what morph, because you can find bad examples, and then for others you really so like the Wayne line albino, there's not very many of them. So while this isn't the best image, it's very indicative of what that line of albino looks like. So, and there's really only one person with those images. So balancing that.
I really love that you included the green goo from...
because people don't know that. I don't want them to, be confused.
It's so... Yeah, I mean, I want to produce, and I'm almost done with like the morph aspect of Retics, but I kind of want to produce a clutch of marbles just so I can experience that in person. But speaking of throwing under the bus, like you did earlier, you went to the extensive route of like the health aspects of it, and there's a picture. I don't know how many pictures you put on there. I haven't looked through that you didn't give photo credit to, but there was a picture of mine that you did not give me credit because I asked for you not to, but I'll just throw myself. It was mites that were in a water tub that I was dealing with a mite outbreak. Yeah. So people are going to look at that and be like, damn, that's a lot of mites. Yep. That's me. I was thinking about even That's me. And I was thinking about like, why should I have shame in doing that? I breed retics. I get retics from other people. That was a clutch that I was consigning with someone. They had sent it to me, and I had mites there. And to be honest, the fact that you included that image and it's so easily seen in a water bowl, I actually looked at that and I was like, that's a really good freaking picture to have in a book.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be ashamed of that. I shouldn't be ashamed. Everybody who breeds and has, over 50 animals is going to have that pop up in their collection from time to time. Fortunately for me, it's only happened twice. But yeah, that health section that you included was, I think, so important to reticulated pythons, because one of the most beautiful things about retics is how resilient they are. But, well, I shouldn't say but, and you can get into some freaking pickles with health issues with retics between pushing and all the other things that can happen to retics. How did you approach that chapter? I'm curious. In terms of like getting.
No, I'm
Go
sorry.
for it.
No, that was a.
No, just
Lucas?
go.
Wait.
No, floor's yours.
No. Okay, that was an
yours.
incredibly frustrating chapter to write because, number one, people aren't forthcoming. Obviously, they don't want that information out there, especially images, or people don't think to take images during emergencies. And number two, as a veterinary student, I need to be very, very careful about what I write and how I write it, because there are implications of giving medical advice as an unlicensed professional or unlicensed person. So and also, like, if you guys say something, it's different than someone who has a background in veterinary medicine saying that. So I have to be very, very careful.
Without a doubt. Did you include any clog lacrimal duct pictures?
No,
because I just dealt with an issue with my
the more complete reticulated python.
Thanks,
right.
Nathan.
No, my male ternate for the last like 4 months has been off and on with a clogged lacrimal duct, and it got so big at one point. I had my vet come over to my place, and he said, "Hey, the fluid is clear and it's not infected, so let's just like give him a couple more big meals. Let's see what happens." And it got down quite a bit, but then blew back up. I mean, his gums and his face were pushing out from it. Everything looked cleaned and healthy, and I was cleaning it well according to my vet's recommendation. And then all of a sudden I fed him a large meal, and you can look at him and you like never would have ever guessed that happened to him. But his whole side of his face, gums even, were just pushing out swollen. And I was messaging my vet, Dr. Koch, and was like, dude, you sure you don't want to do anything about this? And he's like, it doesn't look infected. Let's be as minimally invasive as possible. And I was like, all right, dude, like, I'm listening to you. Yeah. And then I literally looked at him this morning and it was completely gone. And I was like, are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of anecdotal things that have arisen from herpetoculture that seemingly do work. But for me to put that in there would be inappropriate, unfortunately.
Career suicide.
It's under the category of, yeah, it would be helpful. And it would, but I'm not going to do that.
No, totally. I get that. So I'm assuming that was a stressful chapter because you had to dance this beautiful ballroom dance to make sure that you were flirting the lines of giving people good information while also not, putting your future license at stake.
Yeah, definitely. So I really took the approach of examining it through the lens of infectious or communicable diseases, because that's very rarely talked about in reticulated pythons, even though it's an unfortunate reality. So there's 4 main pathogens that you have to worry about. So the serpentoviruses or nidoviruses, Ophidian paramyxovirus, Cryptosporidium. With snakes, you have to worry about Cryptosporidium, Serpentis, and Varanus, and then inclusion body disease, not inflammatory bowel disease. I saw that, and that was hilarious.
That post was hilarious today. Nathan, I don't know if you saw that on the
I did actually see that one today, and I got a good giggle.
That was the first comment, and I was like, "You sure you're not talking about inclusion body disease?"
Too much spicy food, maybe?
Oh man.
So I took the approach of focusing on those because they are prevalent in the species, they cause mortality or morbidity, and then we have commercial tests for them, which is really nice. So I wrote it, and then as part of a deal I made with a private testing company, they reviewed it. They had final say in that chapter. So it is reviewed by someone who is knowledgeable in this stuff as well. However, I wish I knew more that I know now, or I wish I had the connections that I have now when I wrote that.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine. The images that you provided in the book are phenomenal when it comes to where to swab when you're trying to get a nidovirus test. Like I looked at all of those images, and again, you just put so much good information out there. Because one of the biggest things that I see, especially for nidovirus testing, is you get a negative, and a positive. And I can't help but think how much of those negatives are human error, because you're not getting in the right area, you're not swabbing in the right area, and I'm sure that nidovirus, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it works in a way where it can be, inflamed and brought up, and then it can be dormant and brought down. I don't know if that's true or not. That's just kind of how my brain kind of used deductive reasoning to understand. Thoughts on that?
There are physiological stressors that can increase the viral load. Yeah.
Okay, cool. That makes sense.
And along that lines, I should say that the quality of test is extremely important. The gold standard is always going to be going through a pretty much College of Veterinary Medicine, and then below that, but far more accessible, far cheap. A far more accessible and a far cheaper option are the commercially available labs. And if you are just getting into this, go through them. Fishhead lays it out so perfectly.
Is it RAL that's through UF? Who's through UF?
No, UF. UF has the Zoological Medicine Diagnostic Lab.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
So it's the most expensive, and you have to go through a veterinarian. So it's not talked about often in herpetoculture, but that's why I talk a lot about fishhead in the book, because it's so easy. They give you, line by line details of what to do. And if you want a general idea on the, I guess, subliminal health of your animals, that's a very good way to start. And you need to tailor it to the species you keep, because, Lucas keeps green tree pythons, so serpentoviruses are a major concern, where when Nathan finally gets his tree monitors, he's going to be looking at other things, especially with the tree monitors, because so many of them are wild caught. You still need to be doing.
Nope. CBV is the only way I'm buying.
Thank you. Oh, there was a blue tree monitor at my local pet shop that was wild caught. Beautiful, but
yeah, there was a captive long-term at my pet shop, and as much as I loved looking at it, it's nothing I would take home. Just the peace of mind you get when buying CBB is always worth it for me.
It is next to none, and I will say that imports are they're not for everyone. You just got to be on top of your shit. But it's interesting that you say the more expensive route for a university base, because when I did testing when Dwigged was not doing well, I just went through my vet, and a lot of the tests were $250, $300. At the same test, if you go through Fishhead, it's only $75, right? But at the end of the day, there was a problem that I could not resolve by myself, and I was not about to do the test by myself. It just was not worth it at that point. I didn't feel confident in my ability to do it. But dude, you went through the extensive measure on showing what swabbing shit looks like on a cotton tip and sending it in for testing, which is awesome. I don't think I've seen that in a complete book.
You need to do it. And I have photos of, I took the wild caught male to a friend who's a veterinarian. So I took the photos while they did it. So I was able to get some good photos of that. And it goes back to using your resources and people being willing to share and people being helpful. You just need to look for it, and you need to foster it when they do go out of their way, provide you help, because they are under no obligation to. So when they do so, be appreciative, because it is by no means guaranteed.
Again, just flipping to random pages and seeing this picture from Aubrey Prude of a retic biting itself and biting the bottom of a stair of a stool in food mode.
Yeah, just, that's another thing, the associated dangers, because if people don't know what they're getting into, I know Nathan talks a lot about safety because of his back issues, and that's fantastic. I don't hear that on a lot of other sources. Yeah, I have to thank Luke for that image. Unfortunately, that's of an animal that passed away, and he messaged me. He said, "Hey, I know you're doing the book. What do you need images of?" So I gave him about 10 different images I needed, and that was one of them, and that was just fantastic.
This is what I was talking about, like the right places to swab for nidovirus testing in a bunch of different places, and that's that gap that you're looking for.
Yeah, the conal slit.
So
there's other places you can swab to. It's oral mucosa, but the easiest to swab is that coanal slit.
Yeah, easy to access it. But again, I mean, it just goes to show that the level of depth that you went into with creating this book.
Mm-hmm.
It's insane. And I hope that I hope you have better nights of sleep on the way. Now that
I don't sleep regardless.
Done. Yeah, right. You're a vet student. Glenn, before we wrap up, anything else that you want to talk about specifically? This is, and I have zero shame with this. This is a promotion for the book, and it's also a promotion for the podcast in the sense that we're going to be doing this book club, and really diving in depth to this book. And I before we even, that we decided that we were going to do this, I reached out, I got your permission to do this. I thought that it was only, even though it's a public book and anyone is free to do it, at the end of the day, I just felt the need to run it by you, and happy that you'll join us for some of these chapters to elevate the conversation. But this is a promo for the book. And again, zero shame in saying that. Anything else that you want to include about it?
Yeah. So I know you guys haven't had a chance to fully read it yet, but it is in a way so much more than just a reticulated Python book. We just talked about disease testing. It's those same 4 pathogens are part of both RALs and the U.S. Zoological Medicine's diagnostic labs, BOID and Python panels. So it's those same pathogens. So if you keep carpet pythons, if you keep scrub pythons, if you keep ball pythons, it's the same things that you need to be concerned of, and the same biosecurity measures that should be at least considered in that sense. The importation process chapter, that was one that I was fairly proud of, because we hear a lot about it and these kind of glory days of importation, but the ins and outs aren't well known. And so with that chapter, I traced a specific animal from Kalatoa all the way into a keeper, and it's been in the US for more than a decade now. And, for all of the wild caught animals we see today, it's a very similar trajectory. And I hope that if people know more about where these animals came from, especially the wild caughts, then they will have more appreciation for them. And then down the line, more appreciation for the captive breeding efforts to establish a population so we don't have to remove from the wild. There's a lot of fun stuff in here. I was able to update the species range. That was something I was proud of. There's that photo going around of the Burmese python eating the retic, and that's in part of the western extent of their range, and I believe it's Chattogram. So that's kind of neat. The locality archive is something I'm very proud of, because I was able to include animals from localities that hadn't really been showed before, like the Mizoram India population.
Right. That was so badass.
Yeah. And
You know, I skip right to that.
there's a lot of little things too. Like, so this image, it looks like a normal ball python, but this animal is the only true locality ball python in the
Is
US.
that page 7?
Page 7, yeah. So that's from the Zio River area. You hear a lot about Volta ball pythons, and I've talked about that on a previous podcast, and I was misinformed that the Volta area is huge, and the vast majority of captive hatched ball pythons come from that area, and it's really a misnomer. So, just okay, that's the only true ball python locality in the U.S. I have to look through here to remember everything that I wrote. The captive history, obviously, I'm very fond of that. I was able to expand on it a little bit more from that interview, and I think I have an image of the very first clutch of retics in captivity. I didn't have that when we were doing the interview. The captive husbandry, once again, broadly applicable. It's a set of principles that need to be designed to meet a snake species needs and their natural history requirements. So even though they come from similar ranges, a retic and a blood python are going to be very different because a blood python is almost exclusively fossorial, but they come from similar regions and inhabit similar environments. But this is applicable to snakes, lizards, amphibians, stuff like that. Same with the heating and lighting, and I'll talk a little bit more about that at the very end. Nutrition. We see so many fat retics, and I have a very aggressive take on the nutrition where it's don't overfeed, but keep the animal healthy, and it's based on the intestinal villi atrophy and then regrowth that snakes go through. So they have a very interesting digestive process, and by understanding that, we can better suit our dietary schedules for that. And then, of course, the importance of feeding a varied prey diet. What is a dwarf and soup?
Before we get away from it too far, I just want to on page well, actually there's not a page number, but I was mind blown by the yellow heads on the central Cambodian reticulated python. It's the first picture I've ever seen of a Cambodian locality retic, and that yellow head is just stunning.
Yeah. So I talk about yellow heads and how they're found dang near everywhere. And that's another little thing. What is a pure locality? I go into great depth trying to differentiate between a pure locality and a pure locality type, because we hear the same stupid, tired arguments about, well, you weren't there to collect it, so you don't actually know what you have.
Okay, Calto. What? Sorry, go for it.
Oh my, I didn't realize what you said there. It's about provenance and establishing provenance, not being able to not having the GPS coordinates. While that would be great, we don't have that.
This is herpetoculture here.
Yes, herpetoculture. They're not herpetology.
Right.
And then the purchasing guide. I don't know if you've had a chance to go through that. I'm very sorry for you two as breeders, because now you're going to be bombarded with these kind of complex questions. But I remember, Lucas, when
I appreciate it.
Do you remember when I reached out to you for your second Kalatoa clutch? All of those questions, and then you posted them. It's very similar to that. And I am that annoying person who wants to make sure I am getting the correct snake for myself. And the goal is to raise the bar of who is breeding and in who is keeping. And this is a way forward, because I've learned a lot from purebred dog breeding and how to do that ethically. For a very long time, I was under the notion that you can't do it ethically, especially when there's millions of animals in the shelters and millions that are euthanized every year. But there is a need for these purebred dogs, and you can do it correctly. And the irony is that those ethical breeders make almost no money actually doing it. They're just able to pay for it. So I'm envisioning more of a approach to that. I know it's not
a hobbyist
popular
approach.
Yeah.
No, I've been saying that for a while. I mean, everybody that I see that gets into doing the snake thing full time, it falls off. Like there's too much at stake. Yeah, and unpopular opinion, but my reality at least.
We talk so much about overpopulation, overproduction with a species, because a single clutch can be overproduction. So understanding that every animal you produce should be advancing the species in some way. Nathan is killing it with advancing on the morphs front, getting higher and higher percent dwarf and super dwarfs into more and more morphs, and Lucas is killing it on the locality type front.
Someone asked me the other day, are you producing more Solayers this year? And I said, no, it's probably going to be another 4 years until I produce a pure Solayer clutch, because there's no need to produce them every year.
Yeah. So trying to raise the bar and really appreciate those who are doing it right. That's something I want to come back to time and time again, because there are a lot of people doing it wrong, but there are also a lot of people doing it right, and they don't necessarily get enough credit.
Dude, some of these pictures are wild.
Yeah, I can't wait to dive deeper into the book and start this new segment.
Glenn, if it's okay with you, I want to give you an opportunity for acknowledgement sections.
Yes. So obviously it's listed in detail of the acknowledgements, but so many people who were willing to give me the time of day, answer my numerous questions, and then even more people who were willing to supply images for the book. It would have not been possible without you, and I cannot thank you enough. My name is only on the cover of this. This is everybody else's story. I'm the one who wrote it down. I almost don't want to matter. I want to be invisible in this. My being in my history is not important to this. It's everybody else's. And what the book does is try to give them a spotlight. So without the people who shared their images, this wouldn't be possible. So every opportunity I have, I want to thank those people. Obviously, I want to thank you two for being so kind and giving me the time of day to do, the 3 videos, that we did before. A lot of people messaged me, "Oh, I watched your stuff," and that was their introduction to me, which is cringeworthy because I definitely said some stupid things in there. I was probably a little less serious than I could have been, but
I think that's what makes those episodes so fun to read.
I love watching. There's very few episodes I've gone back to watch, and I've watched that series back again, and I loved them.
Yeah, I really wish I could do those better, but you live and you learn. Obviously, thank you to Russ for publishing this book. Oh, I'll thank the NPR guys, because they talked about it on the episode that released today, and I know at least Eric watches the show religiously. So thank you guys. Once again, thank you to everyone who sent me kind messages. And then I can kind of talk about the future a little bit. If you like or if you despise the heating and lighting chapter, I contributed the heating and lighting chapter to a new forthcoming book called Turtle Preservation: The Ultimate Guide to Freshwater Turtle Keeping and Breeding, I believe it's called. It'll be released at the Turtle and Tortoise Preservation Group's meeting at the end of November 22nd and 23rd in Mesa, Arizona. So everything I talk about in that chapter, it's to another level. It's a little bit more approachable because, once again, just having more knowledge and being a little bit more self-assured in my approach, I was able to take a path that wasn't as reliant on showing my knowledge and instead trying to make it as accessible as possible. And that's something I'm going to work on until the day I die, unfortunately. So if you want to learn how to replicate the sunrise and sunset, I go into great detail in that book that's forthcoming. And it'll be kind of the next level progression to what I write about in this book, though. it is more than satisfactory what I included in the Retic book. I'll plug myself for anyone who wants to buy the book. It's available on Amazon. That's probably the fastest way to do it for $55. Or you can message myself or Russ Gurley for international orders or signed copies. Signed copies are $65 in the US. International orders are $95 US shipped, and signed copies are $105 shipped US.
Awesome. Glenn, man, we're looking to having you back on for reviewing some of these chapters. Again, the lighting chapter, I'm not doing that. I'm not even going to attempt to do that. I'm going to read it, and we're going to go through that together. So please be available for that.
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems like you're tuned into the Retic Lounge. So I'm hoping that as we
not as much as I should be. I apologize.
That's okay. I'm hoping that you can at least. We would love. We're gonna do the entire book. So any feedback that you have on this book club aspect, please give it to us.
Yeah.
We would love to stay in contact with that because we want to do our due diligence with getting this information out there in a way that I know for me, like I do struggle at times with just reading comprehension and retaining information because I'm an idiot. And so I know that getting things verbally and in an audio manner is going to be important for a lot of people. And so I'm excited to really jump in and do this. But I just want to thank you again, not just for the book, but taking the time out for all of the episodes that you've done with us, including this one. And I'm really hoping that not just everybody currently in the retic industry, but anybody even remotely interested or even just fascinated about reptiles in general that have always been in awe, like all of us that are listening to this about retics, because at the end of the day, retics are probably, if not the most, at least a top 3 most captivating snakes out there for many, many reasons. I hope that they're willing to jump in and learn a little bit more about them.
Yeah. Thank you guys again for having me on.
Yeah, man. I mean, this is the book that I've been looking for since I've been keeping retics, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's actually a really good way of putting it. It's what we've needed for a very long time.
Yeah, thank you. Hopefully that wasn't too much word salad or avoiding eye contact.
That's okay.
Being stressed.
Stress.
It's hard to talk about stuff like this. Not good at receiving compliments.
I'm
it's
usually not
uncomfortable.
I'm happy to give them.
Yeah.
No, it's uncomfortable and humbling from an aspect, and I'm looking forward to a time where you do get to rest from this and it's out there. I know this is all still very new, and I'm I look forward to the time that you're able to take a deep breath from all of it.
Yeah. When I delete all of my social media in about a year, that'll be the breath.
Oh, jeez.
You two have my phone number, so
exactly.
True.
All right, Glenn. We're gonna kick you into the back studio and wrap up this episode. But again, thanks for coming on, dude.
Yeah, thank you guys again.
See ya.
Bye.
Yeah, like I said, Lucas, this is kind of that book that I've been looking for since I got into reticulated pythons. I think ever since I got introduced into just reptile literature as a whole, but as soon as I got into that subject, I reached out to mentors. I was like, hey, what's the best book for this species? And there was nothing as comprehensive, so I'm excited to really start digging into it myself, digging into it with the listeners, the viewers,
right?
And yeah, it's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, we threw out the idea on the Patreon. I'm really trying to listen to, part of the Reptile Lounge network is I would love to get someone who's willing to come on and do a podcast, a book club podcast. We're going to take the reins as the Retic Lounge and do this Retic book, but I think it would be so amazing if we could get a channel on here on the network.
If it were, like I said, if it were once every couple weeks instead of every week, I'm down to co-host.
I'm even okay. I'm okay with that.
5 books. Yeah, I have 4 or 5 books that I would love to talk more about that I just think are really fun great reads in this
If
hobby.
it's every couple weeks, I think that's okay, as long as it's maybe a couple chapters at a time, right? So that we could still not finish one book in a year.
Yeah, no, I don't think any of the books I'm talking about are as comprehensive as something like this. So yeah, it should
I'm
be
excited.
a little bit more digestible.
Yeah, I hope we get
easy to get through.
Yeah, so if you guys are interested in joining the Reptile Lounge Network and want to do a herpeticulture book club, I think that would be awesome, because again, it's just a great way to gain information. But on that note, that's a wrap for episode 9. We didn't
109.
Yeah, one. I don't know what I said.
You missed a couple episodes there, but
What'd I say?
9.
Oh, 109. But what I do want to do that we didn't do before is give a shout out to our Patreon members. We're always appreciative of you. All of your names are probably passing through the screen right now towards the ending credits. We wouldn't be here without you guys and the support that you guys give us. We really do appreciate everything that you guys are doing for us. If you guys are interested in joining the most poppin' retic community, as well as probably one of the most poppin' reptile-based Discords and Patreons that are out there, that link is down right where you can see where you're watching us, down below at patreon.com/the Retic Lounge. But on that note, we will see you guys next week on episode 110.